In other words, in the unconscious, in Blake's imagination, is the bond between us and nature. In that room, in that place, is the place of the wedding. It has already taken place. But we've slammed the door on that. He says, just as there is a wisdom of the body, which often has a better sense of health than medical science, so too there may be a wisdom of the id, that knows what sanity is better than any school of psychiatry, whose standard of normality is essentially a defense against misconceived social necessity. Yeah, you don't fit into the system, right, you're broken. And we'll move in to do the fixing. There's a tie-in with time involved in this. Alan Watts talks about it. He says, your entire education has deprived you of this capacity because it was preparing you for the future, instead of showing you how to be alive now. In other words, you have been hypnotized by an educational processing system arranged in grades or steps, supposedly leading to some ultimate success. And of course, like we said, we're going to deal with solutions. So then, okay, look, how do we fix this problem? How do we enter back into a personal relationship with that imagination? Wow, it's so complex. Thousands of dollars are paid to psychologists, gurus, and every other kind of person to try and tell us how to do it. Whole movements have arisen. It's very simple. You speak to it. Your relationship with it is no different than your relationship how you cultivate a relationship with a person, the neighbor. Why are you turning to the world? Why are you seeking guidance from the misguided? Why do you seek others to become dependent on you? Why do you become dependent on them? Every time you do that, it's a slap in the face for your higher self. Remember they talked about that a sin unto God will be forgiven, a sin unto the Son of Man will be forgiven, but a sin unto the Holy Spirit can never be forgiven in this life or the next. If you followed my work, you'll know that I identify the self with the Holy Spirit. A sin of yourself. Well then, how can it be forgiven by any external agency? The whole remedy of life is to enter into dialogue with yourself. A conversation. You speak to yourself in the street today, what will happen to you? Don't you know that Beethoven had that dialogue with himself? So did Rilke, so did Rodin, so did Mozart, so did Dali, so did Magritte. Anyone you know as a genius has that perpetual inner dialogue. You wake up, you speak to yourself, you are aware of yourself, and you have that inner dialogue. They're trying to train and drug you out of that today. But this goes very, 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 very deeply indeed. But all I would say is enter into dialogue with it as naturally and as easily as you do with other people. It's no more complex than that. And it's a great honor to yourself to do so. Music is an aspect of this. Leonard Shlain talks about the arts. The ability of species to generate and respond to music is one of the great unexplained mysteries of nature. Apparently, appreciation of music is built into the genetic foundation of all higher life forms. In humans, perfect pitch seems to be encoded somewhere within the strands of DNA. If the fittest do need to survive, then how does the ability to sing in key or keep time to rhythm complement or enhance that survival? The answer is simply, you're not here only to survive. That's why you have that encoding. That's why you have that understanding. Because how does the unconscious speak to you? We talked about you entering into dialogue with it in a very natural way. It speaks to you through art and music. Heidegger also mentioned this. The very sound of the unconscious is music. Musical notation, language, even the sound of language, the sound of words is a form of music. Or art. So again, these are ways that people can get involved in it. Pertaining to all of this, of course, is the question of death. What does all we're talking about have for the final termination of life, or for the other forms of death and mortality that we meet every day of the world? And also don't forget the highest anxiety, the highest fear, right, which all forms of tyranny use on you to freeze your brain, and which we also the internal adversary. And the Heideggers and the Schopenhauers and the Kierkegaards tried to turn it around for you and say, well, okay, since you have the fear of death, at least look at it positively to say maybe that'll spur you to feeling lucid about your life. They call it being unto death. By having a consciousness of mortality, right, and temporality, maybe that'll do the trick to awaken man to his authentic sense of self. But without even getting into that, we do have this concept of death and questions about it and fear and so on related to this question. And that fear can be manipulated by those who wish to do so. But here's what Schopenhauer said about it, and it's very, very pertinent. He says, consciousness is destroyed in death, to be sure, but that which has been producing it by no means is destroyed.